Hello. I didn't see you there. How would you like to know some secrets? It's Purim, y'all. I'm gonna tell you a little something. The honor of God is to conceal a matter, whereas the honor of kings is to search out a matter. That's from Proverbs 25:2. King Solomon, smart man. So it's Purim, and if there was ever a time to be happy, it's now. This is the time to have faith that everything is in the hands of God and God loves you more than you even know. This is the time that it's a huge mitzvah to be joyous and to be happy. Every moment that we carry this happiness in our hearts is another moment that we help bring joy to the world. And at the same time, it is another moment that keeps fear, anger, and hate from it. I believe it was the late, great Master Yoda that wisely stated, "Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering." Dig it, can you? So let's build that faith and trust our Creator that everything is in order. Or as we say it here in Israel, Achi, Kol B'Sedeh. The book of Esther is the most, and you all know I do not say this word lightly, prophetic book in the Tanakh. The name of God is not mentioned not one single time throughout the entire Megillah, which means scroll. And yet, He is everywhere. He is in every word. He is in every instance. To sum it up in just one sentence, God allowed the enemies of His people to dig their own graves, or in this case, to tie their own nooses. The name of our heroine is not even Esther, but rather Hadassah, means myrtle, and it smells good. But the name that was given, Esther, it comes from the word lehastir, to make hidden, just like the true glory of God. So here are our players. Number 1, Esther. From a humble orphan Jewish girl to the queen of the most powerful empire in the world at that time. Living a dream. Esther represents God's hidden glory and humility, as well as her resolve and self-sacrifice for the sake and for the love of her people. 2, Mordecai the Jew. How anti-Semitic does that sound? Mordechai HaYehudi. That's what it was. Although it clearly states that he was from the tribe of Benjamin, Israel are known as Jews even 2,500 years ago. Take that. Mordecai represents the Jewish people, as we should be throughout the generations, whereas no matter what we face or how much we have been oppressed, we stand for what is right. We always save a life, and we always accept God's call when He places us in the right place at the right time. Third guy, Haman HaRasha, aka the Wicked One. This guy represents the quintessential anti-Semite, which inhabits the spirit of Amalek. He was coming after Mordecai the Jew at every twist and turn, and his purpose was to wipe the memory of our people from the face of the earth. The chutzpah of this guy. The craziness here is that Haman's words in chapter 3.8, they say, "And Haman said to King Xerxes, there is a certain people scattered and separate among the peoples throughout all the provinces of your kingdom, and their laws differ from those of every people, and they do not keep the king's laws. It is therefore of no use for the king to let them be." You know where I've heard these kind of words before? The struggle between the people and the hatred amongst them is being nurtured by a very specific interest group. It's a small, rootless, international clique that is turning the people against each other, that does not want them to have peace. It is a people who are both nowhere and everywhere. That's Adolf Hitler. November 10th, 1933 at the Siemens factory. It's bone-chilling. This is Amalek, back then and now. This is the stuff of nightmares. This is the stuff that has been going on since Egypt, since we became a nation. And this is what happened not 70 years ago in the world. And you think that this can't happen again? Oh, it'll happen. But the only difference is that right now, we are standing in the land of Israel. Now we are in the promised land. This time, the Jews have where to go. Perhaps for the Jews of the rest of the world, it's time for another Exodus. The fourth and last player, Xerxes. He was a king, not particularly wise, but wealthy. This king was saved by a Jew. And what does this represent? This represents every single country and nation and province and empire and town and book club that would allow a Jew to live in peace. The higher they promote God's people, the better off that kingdom is. See Joseph in Egypt way back when. So, in regards to secrets, let's reveal some, shall we? Something hidden from the book of Deuteronomy 31:18. It says, "And I will hide my face on that day, because all of the evil they have committed when they turned to other deities. Va'anochi haster astir panai bayom hahu al kol hara'a asher asa, ki pana el Elohim acherim." What day did we learn is that day? It's the last day. Haster astir panai, I shall surely hide my face. Our sages say that the story of Purim is one of the end of days. So I'm going to drop some Kabbalah on you guys since I know how much you enjoy it. Our sages say, here is the secret of Esther from the Torah. Esther grasped and possessed a letter from the Torah, just like all of Israel grasped and possessed the letters from the Torah. It was God who gave Esther the Haster from this very verse, which breaks down into all the letters of the Torah combined. And furthermore, we know that Esther is the secret identity of the Shekhinah, of the glory of God. Because just like she connected with all the letters of the Torah, Israel make up all the letters themselves. And the redemption comes of Esther, who is adorned with royalty and a crown. So will Israel be adorned with royalty and a crown and bring redemption to the world. This is why she was the secret. She was the secret because her Jewish origin was only known to the people once they were saved. And she became queen to the known world at the time. A few other fun facts regarding the Megillah of Esther. The numerical value of Baruch Mordechai, which is blessed is Mordecai, and Arul Haman, damned is Haman, have the same value of 502. Why is that? I'm going to tell you. This shows us what we discussed in the very beginning. God allows the wicked to do their thing, which is ultimately dig their own graves. And by digging their own graves, I mean very clearly attempting to come at God and his people. The foolishness. The damnation of Haman will bring the blessing of Mordecai, and the blessing of Mordecai will bring the damnation of Haman. Now this happens simultaneously. It's a term that some of you might be familiar with. When something is flipped upside down. This is why on Purim and in the end of days, we say v'nafochu, good, bad, bad, good. All the evil in the world, along with the wicked and the lawless, will be snuffed out of existence. And all it takes is something called emunah pshuta, simple faith, which also, by the way, has the numerical value of 502. Because really, that is all we need, is it not? And that's exactly what the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had. As a result, the Lord God was their personal shield. Or in other words, Magen Avot, the shield of the fathers, which also has the numerical value of 502. Thank you so much for joining me. Though today we fast, tonight we celebrate! Stay tuned for Parashat Tsav in the tent of Abraham. I better see you all there, otherwise I will smite thee with thine rod. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye now. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Israel, and I hope you liked that special Purim video that me and my crew put together for you. Stay tuned because after the teaching I'll have a little something as well. So this is Parashat Tsav, order, from the book of Leviticus. Leviticus 6 verse 1 to chapter 8 verses 36. And this one is called, You Want to Get High? Well, it's a question. Do you? In last week's Parsha, when Moses got the call from God, God shared with him the secrets of what? Of the korbanot, lehakriv, to get near, to draw near. Draw near to what? To who? To God. The guilt offering, the sin offering, the grain offering, the burnt offering, and so on and so forth. Now, each has their own purpose, but I just want to focus on one in particular, and that's the burnt offering, korban ha'olah. This sacrifice, according to Chazal, is the most glorious of all that are given because of its atonement capabilities as well as its direct line to God. So we also learn from this just how important it is for creation itself to recognize and worship its creator. So right here in this parsha, it begins like this. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Command or order Aaron and his sons, saying, This is the law of the burnt offering. That is the burnt offering which burns on the altar all night until morning, and the fire of the altar shall burn with it. So what does the word olah mean? In Hebrew it says, Tsav et Aaron ve'et banav lemor zot Torat ha'olah. He ha'olah al mogdah. So the word olah comes from the word la'alot, to ascend. So to translate it directly, it would be called the offering of ascent. Torat ha'olah would be a law of ascent. When someone moves to Israel, for instance, it's called making aliyah. It's a person ascending. So I can tell you that for a Jew, it's a very great mitzvah actually to live in the land of Israel, to even walk in the land of Israel. It's one of the main focuses that we see in the 5 books of Moses. It's all about Israel, and here we are today. So how there are still millions of, U.S. Jews, I don't know, like living there. I mean, look, it's easy to live in Babylon at the end of the day. Nicer houses, nicer cars, the Costco, I get it, all right, fine. But don't get me wrong, and I'm not judging. I really do understand. If I didn't get zapped, I still would have been living a cushy life in Vegas. So as difficult as everything was and is, it's better than the alternative, though. I'm talking about in Israel. The alternative is oblivion. But this right here, this is our birthright. And truth be told, I'm waiting for all you guys to come and be here with me. All y'all, yeah. All of you. So anyway, right here in the Parsha, the Hebrew says, Torat ha'olah, the law of ascension. And this is the first one given. Why is this the first one given? The reason that this is the first one given actually makes perfect sense. It has to do with our thoughts and our state of mind and our state of being, right? Our actions all begin with our thoughts. Everything you do, it starts with a feeling and then it moves on to I'm thinking this, I'm thinking that, and boom, there you go. So if our head's not on straight, then everything else goes astray. So since God obviously knows that this is part of human conditioning, I mean, he did give it to us after all, he gave us the remedy before the ailment. Remember, we learned about this in the form of ascension. Now, why is it called this? This episode is brought to you by Captain Obvious. Let's not overthink it until I tell you, okay? We have all the answers that I'm asking you. Come, let us reason together as buddies. So why is it called Olah? Because it quite simply helps you elevate your state of being and consciousness. Why is that? Because our thoughts and our state of mind and being will dictate what? Our actions, our behavior, and ultimately it's the outcome of our lives. It all starts within us. This korban differs from the others because it is burnt entirely, whereas other korbanot are to be given partially to the Kohanim as tribute, right? Some the Kohanim eat. This korban is exclusively for God. This korban atones for matters of the heart. A thought, a feeling, that's what that's for. This korban would burn all night long until the morning, because when the sun sets, let's be real, when it's dark, that's when we most likely start to scheme, right? And then we act on that inclination that's been stewing over there all night in the darkness. This korban is used in order to humble us before God and to remind us that in this world, we are nothing more than afar va'efer, dirt and ashes, just like Abraham stated in Genesis 18:27. So, he knew what the deal was, and look where he went. However, it's not exactly clear just from the text itself what the purpose of this korban is and what purpose it serves. But that's why we have the prophets and the writings, the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim and the Tanakh, to refer to the sacrifice of ascension while having our sages tie it all together for us beautifully. So this is how the sages do it. They take the entire Torah and then they connect it. And this is how they get what they get. It's not coming out of thin air. Ezekiel 20 verses 32 says, Ve'ha'olah al ruchaichem hayo lo tiyeh, asher atem omrim niyeh kagoyim kamishpachot ha'aratzot lesharet etz ve'even. Now, if you read this in the English, it says, but what enters your mind shall not come about. What you say, let us be like the nations, like the families of the lands, to serve wood and stone. So it doesn't say ole, it says olah, ve'ha'olah. Ole is come up. Ole ruchachem is like if you had some sort of inclination. But what enters your mind? It's translated like that, but the Hebrew is ve'ha'olah, just like korban ha'olah. And on what? Ruchaichem, your inclination, your spirit. Now there are good spirits and there are bad spirits. Okay? So we have these three matters. We have the nefesh, we have the ruach, and we have the neshama. I'm not going to get into it deep, but I'm just going to show you where the ruach stands. This is the ruach. It is called the beinoni, the in-between. It is above the nefesh, which is life, but below the neshama, the soul. Your ruach will either lift you up or bring you down. Okay? It depends. This is your inclination. There's the good inclination and there's the yetzer hara, which we have to battle constantly. So this is how we break it. This is why olah, ascension, is so important. This is why mastering our minds is the first step towards pretty much anything. Now, this is one of the most practical translations into modern day thinking and functioning socially. I'll give you this example because this one is very common, okay? I'm sure many of you can relate in one way or the other. Do we know people who continually play the victim, for instance, right? We know people who don't need anyone else to put them down because they do it all by themselves. Now, this is a terrible habit. It becomes a routine, and this routine becomes a way of life. Now, these poor souls are fearful of everyone and everything, and would rather sit in a dark hole and willingly place themselves under the boots of others because they believe that that's exactly where they belong. And that's exactly where they're going to end up anyway, so may as well Just, save some time. Give me your shoe. There it is. That's where it goes. So if you know someone like this, you go reach out to them today, not tomorrow, today. And if this is you, then please listen up. You are sons and daughters of the Most High God. Your Father is the King. Start behaving accordingly. He knows what you're going through. He's making you go through it, when all you have to do is make a choice to stop. I don't know how. Make a choice. Choose. Now I get it. It's hard. We've all been in a hole, myself included. But we need to hold ourselves accountable so we can not only function in society, but live out our responsibilities as those who bear the light. Do you understand? You're not just living for you. You're not just trying to make it through the day. We were called to a higher purpose. If God bestows on you knowledge and wisdom and understanding, it's not about you. It's about everyone else, and so on and so forth. It's impossible for you to love anyone until you learn to love yourself. Harsh words, but not really. Loving words, because I know where you're coming from. You cannot give what you refuse to receive. You can't. When a person refuses to accept the love of God, what they are giving to others that they perceive as love is not actually love. It's desperation for the sake of acceptance. But that's not love. And how can one love themselves if not by the knowledge, knowing as a matter of fact that God loves you and He made you exactly how you are and placed you exactly where you are in order that you grow and overcome that particular darkness that He put in your life. Why? Well, for the purpose of helping others. Exactly what we're talking about. It's not about you. It's about us. And helping others who, how, where? Others that were and are exactly in the same spot that you are or were. This is why you're going through this. It's for the sake of everyone else. It's all about the man or woman next to you. This is the aravut. We lift each other up. I know it might be a simplification, but you understand what I'm saying here, to break it down practically speaking. Another incredible reference for our thought pattern and the Olah is found in the book of Job, chapter 1, verse 5. Now, it would come about when a cycle of the feast days would be over, that Job would send and summon who? His children. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and offer up burnt offerings early in the morning, burnt offerings according to the number of them all, of his kids. Vehe'elah olot. Olot, right. And he was saying in his heart, he was saying to himself, perhaps my sons have sinned and blasphemed God in their hearts. So would Job do all the days. You understand? This is what the Olah is, even for, let's say, something didn't work out. And I hold something against God, like, why are you doing this to me? Yeah, again, that's also victim mentality. But it's there. And this is why we have the Olah, to overcome that. And so we turn something that is bad and that is profane into something holy and that is good. Okay? This is why it's so important. We break everything. We turn everything on its head. V'nafochu, kind of like Purim. So Job knew, that if there is even the tiniest little bitterness inside one's heart, it begins to spread and to infect the body and your thoughts and then your actions. He did the right thing, practically speaking. But again, Job is a whole nother book, whole nother time, another story. So again, we have been blessed with the Torah. It's a gift. God's given this to us, and thereby we are able to turn the pages, just like in any other book, right? To see ahead just a bit to give us better understanding. So now if we know that everything starts from our thoughts, if our thoughts go unchecked, everything you do, everything will go off path. Everything. If you're not straight over here and over here, it doesn't matter what you do. You cannot serve God like that. You have to straighten this out. He's the one that straightens it out, but you have to humble yourself and come and ask him for help. So, now going back to the first 2 verses of the portion, why does it say this? And who is it for? Who is this ascension for? Tsav et Aaron ved banav. Order Aaron and his sons. So this olah, these thoughts of ascent, they're the beginning of everything, right? For us common folk, but particularly the Kohanim. But if it was just given to the Kohanim, right? The book of Leviticus is the book of Kohanim, right? And this is given to Aaron and his sons. So if it's given to the priests, what's this got to do with us? Exodus 19. We read this. And now if, and I say if, because God said if, and now if you obey me and keep my covenant, yep, the whole covenant, you shall be to me a treasure out of all peoples, for mine is the entire earth. And you shall be to me a kingdom of what? Of priests and a holy nation, a kingdom of priests and holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the children of Israel. Do you understand? This is why. In other words, although not all Israel are made up of Kohanim, I'm not a Kohen, I'm not a Levite, I'm an Israel. I'm on the bottom of the barrel, baby. But it's all good. I'm not made up of, all Israel are not made up of Kohanim, from the line of Aaron. The least of Israel would be on the level of the priests, their holiness, their sanctity, and most of all, their responsibility. So this is why we learn these things in particular. Because, why? Because Hashem, because God. Haya, Hoveh, Ihiyeh. What was, is, and will be. The name of God, which we are not able to pronounce. Surely I can say Yahoo, but clearly some people are missing the point. So Yahoo bless you in the name of Google and Facebook and AOL. But come on, let's talk about this for real. Let's drop everything that isn't real so we can ascend together, because if we are holding on to these names that we don't know how to pronounce, nor do we understand the implications, we're just holding ourselves back. We got to shed all this, because that is ego, because that is not real. We need to get high together. That's what's up. So let's, because it all starts from within, our hearts and our minds. So the Korban Olah. We place the substitute upon the altar. And all of it goes up to the Creator. This is another sense of giving ourselves over to God completely, because again, it's a substitute. We give ourselves over to God completely, uncompromisingly, and with great humility. And what's the result? We go higher and higher. Now, do you know that the nefesh, which is the lowest form of what makes us us, it's the meat bag, okay, if you will, the body, combined with the spiritual inclination, not the soul. But this life itself is on a higher level than the galgalim, than the wheels, if you will. Do you know it's even on a higher level than the angels themselves? This. Because that's what the altar represents. The galgalim and the malachim, the wheels and the angels. But what happens to the offering, right? It's burnt completely in the fire. And only once it's burnt completely, it rises higher and higher. This ascent is considered to be higher than the sun itself, the sun in the sky. And the sun is considered to be the chief luminary. All the axes and wheels revolve around the sun, right? It dictates everything within the order of things. And so all night, the wheels and the angels, they're the gatekeepers of the heavens. And they question any ascent as to why they should let them pass. Why should we accept this? Why do you think that you can rise? Why do you think you can go higher? What are the purest and truest intentions of this offering made by man to his Creator? And all night, this sacrifice of ascent is trying to do just that. Battle within the dark, being tried by heavenly hosts and the gatekeepers to the throne room. You know what they say one to another? Here's what they say. What is man that you are mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you should be mindful of him? Yet you made him slightly less than the angels, and you have crowned him with glory and majesty. You give him dominion over the works of your hands. You have placed everything beneath his feet, flocks and cattle, all of them, and also the beasts of the field, the birds of the sky and the fish of the sea. He traverses the ways of the seas. O Lord, our Master, how mighty is your name in all the earth. Adonai Adonenu ma'adir shimcha bechol haaretz. Even the angels have nothing to say except praise God. You want to know, this is Psalms 8, by the way. So why? Who is this psalm speaking of? You know who it's speaking of? Why? It's actually speaking of Moses. And when? When Moses received the Torah from Mount Sinai. I've mentioned this before, but most of the Psalms, when it comes to, who is the man who can rise high and ascend, mi'aleh behar Adonai, right? I think it's Psalms 26, if I'm not mistaken. That was about Moses, because he could, and he was, and he did. So when we see the man overcoming, it's David praising Moses for his closeness to God and the levels that he achieved. So we see this man, this mortal, Ben Adam, son of man, Moses, he rocked all the heavenly hosts. And his crown of glory that he was given, that's the Torah. So up until that point, the law was being guarded by the angels until one who was worthy came along. But Moses, he was higher even than they were. And it was in his merit, in the merit of Moses, that we receive the Torah today. As it is written, Torah tziva lanu Moshe, morasha keilat Yaakov. The Torah that Moses commanded us is a legacy for who? The congregation of Jacob. That's what's called the 5 books of Moses. He earned it. So this one was from Deuteronomy 33:4. So what can we understand from this? What is the rite of passage? So we discussed the rite of passage of becoming Israel last week, didn't we? We did, right? You have to be Jacob in order to be Israel. That's the only way it works. Otherwise, you're taking Satan's words and vaya con Dios. Every Jew who lives according to the Torah receives this crown of glory. And when the angels see this, they know they got to step aside. The battle that takes place in the darkness of night will eventually see the sun. As the sun rises, it'll see the light, ascending higher and higher and higher. Chazal described this life that has been infused with Torah as breaking free from all the matters of the flesh and returning to her Father's house, where she belongs. Now, we actually also in the prayers, we refer to our neshama, the soul, as a she. It's in the feminine tense. Once confronted with the angels, and they recognize that this soul and the Torah are inseparable, not only do they get out of the way, but they usher it up as well, higher and higher, until it reaches the Most High. My friends, these things are being taught. The things that are being taught right here in this parasha, these are the things to come. Our whole life, we are called to ascend. We are called to rise through the night until the break of dawn. We're going to be battling angels, or we're going to be tested by creation itself. That's why all of existence exists, to test us for the sake of our olah, for the sake of us making aliyah, to see if we are worthy of this ascension. And the only way to even begin to break through that first barrier is humility. But one can only be humble if one has an idea of the past the present, and the future. We discuss this. Avar, Hove, Hiye, Haya, Hove, Hiye, excuse me. The name of God. Which is why what comes to mind as I'm writing this, it expressed perfectly and beautifully by our sages in Ethics of the Fathers 3:1. I'm going to read that for you real quick. Okay, so the saying goes like this. Akavia ben Mehalalel Omer. Akabia ben Mehalalel says, consider three things and you will not come into the grip of sin. Not sin, into the grip of sin. Know whence you came, whither you go, and before whom you will give justification and reckoning. Did you understand what I said? Da minayin bata, where you came from, le'an ata holech, where you're going, ve'lifnei mi ata atid latet din. The past, the future, and the present. And it says, whence you came, minayin bata, from a putrid drop. Mitipa srucha. Serach is stench. You're from nothing. Where do you go? To a place of dust, worms, and maggots. Lemakom afar rima v'tole'ah. Ulifnei mi ata atid latet din v'cheshbon. And before whom you will give justification and reckoning? Before the King who reigns over kings, the Holy One, blessed be He. You guys need to listen to this interpretation. Consider these three things and you will not come into the grips of sin. Sin is the result of a distorted perspective. Do you hear this? Focusing on these three injunctions will enable one to develop a healthy attitude and to remove many of the major root causes of sin from his life. Daminayin bata, okay? Know where you came from, v'lan ata holech, ulifnei mi ata atid latet din v'cheshbon. Know whence you came, where you're going, and who you're going to have to give the reckoning to. So the Mishnah first points out the questions and later repeats them with the answers. We have Rabbi Moshe Almosnino, views this first part of the Mishnah as addressed to the soul of man, the neshama. Know, O soul, where you come. The human soul, a spark of the eternal God, emanates from beneath the heavenly throne. That's where our connection is. This is where ultimately we're returning. This is what we're seeing right here in the Parashat, the Aliyah, from right here to over there. Imbued with such divinity, man is enjoined to retain the purity of his soul and not besmirch it with sin. Additionally, realize whither you go, where you go. You must return your soul to your Maker as spotless and as pristine, if not more pristine. Enhanced by what? Your good deeds, only through Torah and mitzvot, as you receive it. Now, there's a dual approach here. The Mishnah initially suggests a positive approach towards protection from sin. It encourages a positive self-image in man. What did I say before about thinking you're a victim or thinking that you deserve, to have your face planted in the ground? It encourages a positive self-image in man who runs the risk of falling into despair when he loses his confidence. Only when his approach does not succeed in awakening him from his spiritual slumber is the shock treatment of the latter part of the Mishnah suggested. The Talmud gives similar advice to those of you who think Talmud is garbage. You could leave now. The Talmud gives similar advice to one who finds himself the victim of seemingly causeless pain and aggravation. Since this is most likely the result of one's sins, it initially suggests Torah study as an antidote for the sway of the Satan. If that is unsuccessful, the Talmud suggests that the person read the Shema Yisrael, which teaches love and the fear of God. If all else fails, then only then should he be reminded of the harsh reality of the day of death, of the reckoning. You see how that works? You can go on with the world of eternal rewards, where you will bask in the goodness of the Almighty. Or you go to the other place. Thirdly, you focus on the one before whom you will give justification for yourself and reckoning. A person's life is so significant that every move must be reported to the Creator, and it is. He must never consider himself an unimportant being. Did you hear what I just said? You must never consider yourself an unimportant being. You are not a mistake. You are very much on purpose. You are part of God's plan. Whose actions or misdeeds are ignored in the grand scheme of the world because they're not. Thus aware of his nobility. Whose nobility? Your nobility. Man can save himself from spiritual oblivion. You have been given the tools to do this. This is your purpose. God's not going to do this for you. He's going to give you the tools, the instructions, and the directions. How well do we know how to follow instructions? Not too well, apparently. So we're all there. Don't worry about it. Torat Avot, the laws of the fathers, interprets the first part of the Mishnah as follows. Know from whence you came. When the heat of desire overcomes one, he should be aware of its source. Where does this come from? Whether it's lust of the flesh, or whether it's hate, or whether it's anger, where does it come from? It is the darker side of him that is lustful. Yet he often fools himself into believing that his motives are above reproach. This is what we do. We excuse ourselves. He must realize that it is not, now check this out. He must realize that it is not a friend, but a foe who seeks to incite him. Furthermore, focus on whither you go, on where you go. One tends to deny that even one sinful deed has a far-reaching effect on him. But the spiritual blemish imprinted on man's soul by iniquity is deep and difficult to remove. You can't just go out doing something that you know as a fact is a sin with your mind saying, well, God knows my heart and I'll just repent later. What if you don't get that chance? You don't want to end up there. You want to be very, very conscious of this. Finally, one must realize that his actions have a negative influence upon others. And this is probably the most important out of all three. One must realize that his actions have a negative influence upon others who witness them, who see them. In this context, before whom you will give reckoning, in this context, it's not God, but it's your fellow man. How are you behaving? Are you a man of God? Do you claim to be something that you are not? I get it. Without God, without the Torah, we are all wretches. I mean, I can speak for myself honestly and humbly. I sin every day. I know this. I try to be better, but I know that I fall. But I try to consciously be better. Sometimes I lose myself, and that's okay. He's giving us grace. We have to give ourselves the grace. We have to allow the chesed that God gives us in order to ascend, in order to move higher and higher. That's the only way it works. Otherwise, what's the point of anything? When others learn from our actions, we bear responsibility for their misdeeds as well. Do you understand how crazy that is? If I do something that's messed up and someone copies my actions, if I lead someone astray and someone is led astray, all the bad that they do falls on me as well. Them too. They're not absolved. Okay? But I gotta take their punishment and mine. The term holech, in the present tense, man is constantly going, and this is what I've been telling you guys. Man is constantly going. He's either merely on the way to the cemetery or the path to paradise, depending on how he lives. The Chafetz Chaim explains that man is always on the go, moving not only physically, but more importantly, spiritually, higher and higher. He never stands still. And the crucial question is, therefore, is for man to know where to go. Are you going spiritually up or down? Do you sense growth or do you sense recession? Stating that there is no such thing in human life as stasis. You can't be still. King Solomon describes the resolution of this dilemma. He says, the path of life goes upward for the intelligent and successful person in order to avoid descending into the abyss. And this is Proverbs 15:24. In other words, one must go up in order to avoid going down. The next clause speaks of man giving a reckoning for his deeds. In the next world. The words liten din means literally to give judgment. But Rabbi Shlomo of Lutzik notes, one does not give judgment, but rather he is subject to it. Why does our Mishnah speak of giving judgment? In the world of truth, which again we are called to live in the world of truth, man will realize the extent of the damage he has inflicted on himself due to his sins. He will beg to be judged so that God may prescribe some type of therapeutic punishment to purify the soul, because that's the only way, right? I will purify you like silver in the fire. It's going to hurt, but it's going to make us clean. Thus, man will willingly surrender himself to judgment. So, we have to understand, are we mature enough to know whether we mess up, whether we are, this is why we are accountable to one another. Speak to my friend, listen, I need help. I got problems. I'm moving sideways. I'm moving down instead of moving up. And we have to help pull our friends up. So this is why the Olah is so important. Again, I was so pleasantly unsurprised to see the correlation between this, because the verses popped into my head and I opened it up and I read myself all these wonderful things. Okay, I know that you can get this book and you could read it yourself, but within this context, I believe is important. So what is the sake of this? This is all for the sake of our ascension, moving higher and higher. So I hope that made sense to everyone. But now, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, every day, do you want to get high? So moving along, jumping towards the end of the Parsha, what day is it? Does anyone know the date? It's the 23rd of Adar. Okay, that's when this Parsha takes place. It's 7 days before Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Nisan, it's the month of freedom, if you will. What happened Nisan? Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Exodus from Egypt. Now, what Aaron and his sons are currently going through on a personal scale, we as a nation will go through at the end of days on a grand scale. Rosh Hashanah is the birth of man, but Rosh Chodesh Nisan is the birth of Israel. And according to Hebrew calendars, it is called the first month. Just another thing that separates Israel from the rest of the nations, as God's called separate us. So we have 7 days of preparation. Now, why not, this is peculiar. Why not 6 days, right? We got the 6 days like creation, like the 6,000 years, and then the 7th is Shabbat. So what is the 7 days of preparation right now? Why 7? Y'all don't know what's going to happen on the 8th day, but I do. And don't worry, I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you next week in Parashat Shmini, the 8th. In any case, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me. Stay tuned for some more Purim shenanigans after the credits. Have a Chag Purim Sameach. Really, just take this one in and be happy and joyous. And have a Shabbat Shalom. I'll see you.
Children of Israel, behold, the 10 suggestions. 1. Thou shalt wash thine hands after every bathroom visit. no matter how brief, because it's just gross. Take your stinking paws off of me, you damn dirty ape! 2. Thou shalt not pour over to thy neighbor's parking space. 1 car, 1 space. Either learn how to park, or take a cab. 3. Thou shalt be generous to thine waitstaff, and leave no less than a 20% tip from my cold, dead hands. 4. Brush thine teeth.
You get Hamantashen! You get Hamantashen!
5. Democratic socialism is just socialism.
These are not the Hamantashen you're looking for.
6. The best part of Batman v Superman was Gal Gadot.
You want to know how I got this staff?
7. Keep thine opinion to thyself. No one cares.
Carry on.
8. There is no such thing as a kosher pig.
You get Hamantashen! And you get Hamantashen! And you get Hamantashen! And you get Hamantashen!
9. There is only one holy tongue, and it is Hebrew. Learn it. כי אם לא הבנת את מה שאני אומר, יש לכם בעיות.
Everyone gets Hamantashen!
And 10. Why so serious?
Jeez. On Purim, we eat Hamantashen, which is Oznei Haman. We eat Haman's ears. We should probably change that as a nation. I'm just saying. It's delicious, though.
How about a magic trick? I'm gonna make this water disappear.
I don't always drink water, my friends. But when I do, I prefer it straight from the rock.
And it's gone.
Stay holy.